Hi, I'm Melissa.
And I'm Jesse.
Welcome to the Reimagine Success Podcast. We're a husband and wife team who want to make a difference and change the way we all view success.
We've had the privilege of interviewing so many amazing, talented, and successful guests. Each one of them experienced success in their own way.
We want to change how society views success by inspiring you to live your best life and celebrate your successes no matter what that looks like, big and small.
Success looks so different for everyone, and we want you to reimagine your success. Welcome to Season 2 of
Reimagine Success. Welcome back to Season 2 of Reimagine Success.
Man, this season's been off with a bang. We've had such amazing guests already.
I know. I mean, I've learned so much. I feel like I'm growing. I feel like all of our guests are teaching not only our listeners, but us something every single day.
Yeah. And what's cool is that we're going to be working with some of these people, following up with them in the future. So be prepared for a lot of big things coming in the future. And speaking of future, we've got a pretty big weekend ahead of us.
A huge weekend. MomoCon is this weekend in Atlanta, Georgia, at the convention center in downtown. So if you are planning on going to MomoCon, please come out and see me. I will be at booth 508. If you go to my Instagram page, there is a map, a detailed map, and my booth number is marked out, so you'll be able to find me. But definitely come by, say hello, grab a photo. It's going to be a really exciting time.
And she will be dressed like Crimson. So if you have not seen that, either in pictures, I don't know where you've been, but if you haven't seen it live, it's definitely worth seeing because she looks amazing in the outfit.
And I will have a custom sword at the booth. So I'm really excited about that. And speaking of excited, we have an amazing guest today. And just all of our guests already have been so amazing. But today we have Fei, and Fei will go ahead and introduce you.
Yeah, Fei Wu helps small business owners craft video content to showcase their products and services and to grow their customer base with YouTube, podcast, and virtual event strategies designed to meet their business needs. She's a bilingual podcaster, English and Mandarin Chinese, the creator of Feisworld Media, a monetized YouTube channel with 18,000 subscribers and 50,000 views per month, over 50,000 views per month. Feisworld podcast with over 200,000 downloads worldwide, and Feisworld documentary series on Amazon Prime. Fei left her job in marketing and advertising to build a company of her own called Feisworld with a mission to help small businesses and creative entrepreneurs tell better stories, find more customers, and create new revenue streams. She also teaches others how to run better Zoom meetings and webinars, own and monetize their content on YouTube via Feisworld Academy. Her stories have been featured on Dory Clark in her best-selling book called Entrepreneurial You, as well as Harvard Business Review. What a bio.
What an introduction. Welcome,
Oh my goodness,
Fei.
Fei. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. You guys make me sound so fancy. I was like listening to it as if I'm part of the audience.
Well, you are fancy. Look at that
Amazon
pedigree. Oh my goodness.
Yes, I'm just thrilled to have you on the Reimagine Success podcast. And you have not only we work together, but not only that, but we have turned into friends. And I am just so grateful to have you in our life. And I can't wait to dive into this interview.
I'm an open book. I'm just so glad. I'm very grateful to have met you and, Jesse. And, we briefly talked, not so long ago, chatted on my live stream, and people really enjoy the content. So grateful to be here for this conversation.
Yeah, awesome. It's really cool because we're kind of reversing the roles today. A couple of weeks ago, we were with Fei on her podcast. So make sure you check out that episode. Make sure you check out her podcast in general. It's super amazing. And she's like one of the best hosts out there. And you'll catch Melissa and myself on there a couple of weeks ago. And now we've swapped and we'll be doing the interviewing, and Fei's our guest. So we're really excited about it.
And we were actually on Fei's podcast. That was our first podcast, switching it, and we couldn't be more grateful.
Yes.
And today is just going to be just as much fun. So with that, Fei, why don't you introduce yourself? Let the audience and let the listeners know your story and where you came from.
Sure. And thanks for that intro. But, obviously there was a life that happened before all of that, becoming a creative entrepreneur. So I was born and raised in Beijing, China, in the 80s, and had a pretty wonderful childhood with, like everybody else, there's a middle part that was kind of traumatic, but I have great parents. My dad passed away in 2009, which piqued my interest in palliative care, hospice, and all that. So, I came to the States when I was 17. I just turned 17. I was basically became a high school senior playing ice hockey with boys.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, a lot of stories there. And after I graduated, I immediately fell in love during that summer between high school and college with Taekwondo, martial arts. I ended up pursuing and getting my 3rd degree black belt in 2015, maybe. And, moved on to working in consulting and advertising, marketing for the next 10 years, and finally decided to start my own company as a freelancer at first, and then slowly but surely finding my own clients since 2016 all the way through now. So I feel very grateful, very fortunate to have carved out that path before the pandemic. And I was able to then, be able to teach other people and share my experience. So in a nutshell, that's kind of who I am, where I came from.
Well, I mean, that's amazing. 6 years now you've been running your own business, and you came from another career. How was it like leaving that other career?
Yeah, I think, leaving that career with a solid income, benefits, and also a lot of Rolodex for clients, a lot of fancy client names, Fortune 500. There was definitely some risks, but I was very lucky to be surrounded by entrepreneurs who had already done it. People closer to my age, older or younger. Because of the podcast, it's something that I recommend to everybody. At that time, I had been running my show for almost exactly 2 years. So when you think about releasing weekly episodes, which I did, I had already spoken with 100 people, and it's incredible when you think about 2 years, how much can we really learn, accomplish in 2 years? And I talked to 100 incredible people from all walks of life, all, skin color, backgrounds, language, accents, and that really opened up my eyes.
Yeah, it's been super cool being on that side of things for us. Cause I mean, we are at episode, I think 29 this week or 30. I think it's episode 30 actually. And we've talked to around like 25 different guests at this point. We've had a couple solo episodes, but for the most part, we've had a guest almost every week. And throughout this time, we are like meeting just the coolest people.
Right.
And like Melissa said earlier in the intro, just learning unbelievable amounts every single week. It's like a weekly masterclass with the guests. And so I can imagine after years and years of doing this, the people that you've spoken to and what you've gleaned from it, you must learn so much every single week.
Oh, we become so much smarter. I was going to say how much smarter that you feel that you have become, not just by sheer IQ points, but like you said, I mean, it's hard for me to categorize my guests. So my show, briefly called Feisworld, isn't about just niche down how to do this one thing, how to become this one thing. Instead, it was my outlet to connect with whoever I wanted. So I would literally be going to a Cirque du Soleil show and see the 2 flyers or aerialists and say, I'm going to reach out to them. I really hope they have their website, because Cirque du Soleil doesn't reveal anybody's names,
Right.
Only the names of the acts. So that's why it's important for you to become an entrepreneur, put your voice, put your names out there. But then I would also encounter people, for instance, I would be finishing an Apple Plus show or something on Netflix. I spot it. I love these independent documentary films, and I see the credits roll through. It'll be like, I want to talk to that guy. Or I could be watching Melissa from, on TV, and I'll be like, I want to be like that girl. And I might just reach out to her directly. That's literally how I reach out to people. Still is how I connect with people today.
And Jesse and I was actually just talking about this the other day, and it is such an amazing platform in order to not only learn and grow, but build your community and build your base of people. So it's for anyone out there, it's just a great platform, and everyone needs to learn. And podcasting and video podcasting is just the best solution out there.
Yeah. It's really great to just be able, like you said, you see something cool that you enjoy, you reach out. I did the same thing. We had a juggler that actually was at Cirque du Soleil as well. She's a Ukrainian juggler, lives in Germany, and I saw her doing a trick on Facebook. Somebody had shared a post. And so I looked her up, found her Instagram, reached out, just by chance to see if she was interested. And she was, and she came on, had an amazing story. So it's like the people you see, they've got great stories, and it's so cool to be able to interview them and get to know them and hear their story and let them share that with the world. So what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and we respect that and think it's just the coolest.
I'm glad you guys are doing the same thing because, I think there's a misconception of, the podcasting world is so saturated and you don't need another host and you don't need more stories. There are people who actually would say that, like sometimes to our faces.
Yeah.
But it's not true. Even if the three of us interview the same person, exact same person, we will most likely ask a different question. That person will have different chemistry connecting
Absolutely.
with each one of us and be able to share a different perspective. At the very least, I think we all learn, even just people from within the interview, we all learn something from each other.
And it's really cool that you say that because every podcast is a little bit different. And, we focus on like positivity and making sure that you celebrate your successes and failures and struggles. Whereas another podcast may focus on HR solutions. And the same guest, like you said, will have such vast information and knowledge to give for each podcast. So it's really cool.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, the two of you were in an event with the company that we all work for, Executive Summits, and you were interviewing Mark Cuban. And while Melissa and I were sitting there watching, we're like, oh man, we wish we could get him on our podcast because there's so many other questions that we wanted to ask that weren't really on topic because it was a CEO summit. And like, we just had all these burning questions that we wanted to dive deeper into. And we're sitting there like, I wish we could just ask him these questions right now.
Yeah, the desire is so real. And you touch upon something really important because when I started my show, I was literally practicing with whoever that I was comfortable with. I would talk to the colleagues that I admired, which by the way, was not everybody. I was very selective. And then I went to family members and all that. But quickly, right, how do you make the decision, is that a leap? Is that a distinction or decision to go after really famous people? No, I absolutely understand that appeal because a lot of people want to be put, on somebody's radar to say, wow, this person, somebody still asked me like, oh, you interview Seth Godin. There's so many people who came to me. It's like, how did you interview Seth? And how did you put him on in your documentary? How did you do that? Like even the how to do that, people are interested in learning. But in the long run, I'm curious to hear what you have learned. I know it's been 6 months, 7 months, but I noticed that sometimes the everyday unsung heroes just have even more to say about their lives and more relatable, practical skills to share with us. Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, I feel like for us, what we've learned so far is just to be open to everything that comes across you. Because in order to, at first, of course, we did the same exact thing as you. We went to our friends, we went, to our family members. Hey, we have this podcast that we're doing. Can you guys come on? But then it started where people were kind of reaching out to us and, we were kind of going after people that we didn't know. And it's such a different experience, I feel like, from interviewing someone personally to interviewing someone you have not physically met before. And you just met them through Zoom or, through video, and you're trying to learn their personalities while you're interviewing them. And, it's really just being open and being present. And I know we talked a little bit about that on your podcast, being present and listening and growing as you go along.
Yeah, because everybody has a different perspective and everybody's got a story to tell.
Yeah.
Which is the thing I love about humanity is we all have these different journeys and we all discover things in different ways. And we might all be in the same field doing similar things, but it looks radically different. And it's so cool to we highlight people's success stories and we look at small successes, big successes, all of it. So everybody has success in one way or another. Nobody's a complete failure in life. Even if you feel like you're a complete failure, the fact that you got up today and brushed your teeth and put on clothes, that's a success for some people. Like sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to celebrate even the most minute things. So just hearing the different perspectives from the people that we have, and like you said, some of these unsung heroes who will never get fame and accolades just because that's not what they desire, but getting to feature their story and using their story to impact other people is so cool because we get to give them a voice where they didn't have one before.
Absolutely. A variety is key. Yeah. It's not either or, but both. And so it's good for us to practice as well.
Right.
So going back to your story, Faye, I know that you transitioned over to America. You said when you were 16. And so what was it like coming over to America and adapting to a brand new culture? Have you been to the United States before that? And what was that process like?
Yeah, it was such an incredible experience. And this part, by the way, is something that I never thought anybody would be interested in.
I love it. I love it.
Right. Like I never knew that it was interesting. And yet like everybody seems to be kind of interested in that transition. And for me, something kind of unusual or maybe not so unusual happened is when this happened with this as in 1999 and really years leading up to that, I kind of knew that I wanted to kind of start a new life. I don't know why I felt that way as a 14, 15-year-old. I wanted to do something different. Academically, I was okay, but I wasn't the number one strongest, top 10%. So I probably wouldn't be able to go to like the Tsinghua University, Beijing University, which is the Harvard of China. There was a lot of emphasis on academic work, but something about me, I didn't know I was going to be a creative entrepreneur. That phrase didn't exist, but I knew it was something different than what was kind of the paved path. And I had the pleasure of meeting groups of kids from overseas. Some of them, actually came from the US. I still remember was Highland Park High School in Chicago, of all places, stopped by our high school. And basically it was just like a day trip. And they were kind of touring different schools in China. They were kind of shocked at the amount of the mountains of work that we had to do and like what we're focusing on. And given my English wasn't really all that fluent at the time, I remember all these fantastic conversations I had with the other 15-year-olds and different perspectives and insights in those very brief moments. And I said, you know what? I can imagine being friends with them. I can imagine living in another country on my own. I think when you're young, you don't really foresee or really worry about all the things, all the challenges later on. And I encourage all of us to kind of go back to our younger selves. And I know we have different experiences, but I was so gung-ho about it. I was so excited. And my parents didn't speak English. They were also they didn't know, like, what? We didn't agree to this. Like, what's going on here? Why do you have this idea? And sometimes I watch YouTube channels to see like someone who looks like Melissa now living permanently in South Korea. I was sitting there, it's like, oh my God, I can imagine being the parent and my daughter approaching me to say, I want to live in another country. And I just realized like, I did exactly that. And so I did. And I reached out to the agency, several agencies, selected schools based on two factors. One is what the tuition may be. It was a lot for all the private schools. I think it was like $35,000. Back in 2000, we're all boarding students. And the other is like, I wanted to make sure that I had a hockey team, boys or girls, doesn't matter. So those are my two criterias. And
so how long, can I pause right there? How long were you playing hockey up at this point? I'm just curious because
only a year. Can you imagine that?
And you were just that into it.
Wow.
I was so into it. There's something about growing up and being like in my body. It was really hard to have to like obey all the rules. I kind of started piecing together all these things like recently. And I realized that, I grew up for 10 years. I grew up with only boy cousins. They were like pretty violent and they could do anything I couldn't. My grandparents were extremely strict. It was like, you're a girl, you can't do this. You can't, all these rules. So I had very like a negative association with being a woman, being a girl. And I just want to break away from all that. I think playing hockey or just simply skating, I didn't really need the game, as I learned recently, is being free, being speedy, being so careless or carefree. Just gave me that freedom to reimagine myself, my own identity.
I love that.
I love that too. And, speaking of, I'm sure Asian culture has a lot of strict rules. I know, here in America, a lot of, I know Jesse can talk about the kids.
Oh yeah. All my Asian students were always my hardest working and they would tell me stories about their parents. Like if they didn't get certain grades, they would just be in big, big trouble. And a lot of pressures and, just the drive to succeed was so much stronger than, your typical average American student.
Do you feel like that when you actually came over to the United States, that you were a little bit farther along than
Oh, I was.
Yeah.
I believe it.
I believe it because of the criteria that you had at your schools. It feels like that your agenda from day to day was a lot stricter than what we have over here in order to promote education and promote growth and increase our brains, basically.
It's so funny that you asked that question, Melissa and Jesse. Observing, I forgot that you're an educator, so you get to see all this, and you're inevitably immersed in a very multicultural environment.
Yeah.
As a result, and I think for me, I was kind of cracking up because when you come here, your math, physics, chemistry, all these things they come so easily to us because we start taking calculus when we're in 7th grade.
What?
You know, it was crazy. By the time
I was a senior in high school when I took calculus, a senior, and I had to take it for an AP course because they weren't going to offer it just normally.
Right.
Exactly. It's a tremendous amount. First of all, I don't think I chose, certainly I did not choose that path. I was kind of just forced into it, right? This is what every kid did. And you are ought to do the same. And I think, you know, looking back, you come here, all the science stuff is pretty straightforward, but let's not forget there's the English side, there's humanity, there's American history, which we didn't really learn much about. Yep. All these like very, I don't know, like verbiage heavy, like contextually, like how do we actually make sense of these things?
Essays.
Right? All these like crazy things. And then but it was so fascinating I think you grow up and you develop very quickly in a way that on top of all this knowledge that's brand new to you, now you're speaking a completely foreign language. This is not a dialect in Chinese. And you need to interact with kids, international kids, local kids, and different ways. It was just so much information all at once. And I am so honored and so fortunate to be in that environment to learn so much about it.
Wow, that's so cool.
Not to mention the English language is one of the stupidest languages on the planet. It makes no sense. I count my blessings all the time that I was born a native English speaker, because to try to learn this language as a second language, I just can't even fathom how difficult that could be.
Right. And also coming over here and now starting your own business as an Asian woman. How has it been working so hard to build your brand, you know, especially in the climate over the last 2 years, you know, COVID and everything that's been going on. And people are being so insensitive toward Asians due to the stereotype that came along with COVID. How's it been through that process, especially the last 2 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. And something I feel like we need to talk about and acknowledge and address it, because I think because I came here when I was really young, you know, now I look at young couples in their 20s that come together and they establish a life, they have children, like they had this framework and the support system when they're here, someone they're familiar with. I very much just came by myself. I have to establish not just, you know, when I was young, it was just any sort of relationships and career path and schools. And I had to build everything from scratch. And frankly, couldn't really call mom and dad either because they wouldn't know what to do, right? They're not in this environment.
Right.
So I think I learned very quickly, but also I think when you're that young and also there's just so much going on, frankly, more than you can learn and process at any given time. I think I kind of put on my blinders as well to say, okay, I'm going to immerse myself in the culture. So I'm going to not go to Chinatown and eat Chinese food all day. I'm not going to only make Chinese friends. I'm grateful that they're there. And frankly, my private high school didn't really have a ton of Chinese kids. So it's unlike today. You go to like Milton Academy, it's like all Chinese. And it's crazy. I see the pictures like, oh my God, are they in China or here? And it's incredible. And I just didn't really have that. So, but I got to say that in recent years, since the past 10 years, I decided to completely take off the blinders and really acknowledge and appreciate my Asian heritage. Because, you know, I wasn't really born and raised in this country and I was 16, 17. So I was, you know, going towards adulthood and I realized it was time and I had specific things I wanted to do. Like, how do I support the Asian American community, specific creators? So I noticed that I sort of had a head start compared to some of my friends who were literally starting their businesses in the middle of the pandemic, not just Asian Americans, anyone I know. And it's been a challenge. So I feel like I have a head start. And frankly, what I also know about being a podcaster and YouTuber is that if people choose not to watch my video or learn this thing about me, the way I teach, they don't have to watch it. If people were like, I much prefer to learn from a non-Asian person, that person can simply click away. I'm not encouraging anyone to do this, but people who end up finding me, choosing me, including Michael Price, who discovered me on YouTube, he's like, yeah, I just Google who knows, Zoom webinars the most. And I found you and I contacted you.
So your SEO is working.
My SEO is working, and you kind of filter through people who, have any sense of discrimination, where wouldn't feel comfortable working with a person of another race. I have people who admitted to that, actually, and be like, I don't hate Asian people. I just don't know how to approach. I don't know what questions to ask. I don't feel comfortable. I said, okay, let's open up the conversation. What do you want to know? Ask me. Right.
Yeah.
So
that's a great way to look at it. What do you want to know? Ask me. Let's get to, I'm a human just like you are.
Yeah. Like just because you have a different color skin or, like you eat food, you sleep, you bathe yourself, like all normal human things. Like we're all,
did you
we're
put
all
on
saying,
pants?
Put on clothes in the morning,
Yeah.
brush my teeth. Yeah.
Like we're all just people. We all do the same stuff. It just looks a little bit different because we live in different places and grow up in different environments and learn different things. Which leads me to ask, so I'm unbelievably intrigued by Chinese culture. Like I just think it's beautiful, and there's a lot of really great things in the Chinese culture that I think that we could benefit from in American culture. So what are some of those things that you think that you saw growing up that you kind of miss about Chinese culture that you don't see here in America as much?
Oh, absolutely. I wish people talk about these things more, because when you come here, most people like to ask what it's like to be an only child, the one child policy, and all politics and religion related topics. But I think what I miss the most is the intricacies of art, calligraphy. My mom, who was a master artist at the Forbidden City in Beijing, China for 40 years, I grew up feeling so privileged and surrounded by culture. I rollerbladed inside the Forbidden City. I played tennis against the walls, which you can't do that anymore. These days you have to wear like booties or something. You got like plastic bag around your shoes to walk around these places.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a very free, like it didn't really have any worries whatsoever. So the cultural side and the art and what I also miss is, I think, the certain type of interactions that we have with people, because we were kind of a developing country for many, many years. I think people realize the necessity to stay close together. So grandparents help out their kids, but your neighbors, oh my goodness, like your neighbors, not just whoever lived next door, anybody in the building, people are like 10 blocks away. If you need something, you can talk to them. And everybody felt really close. Whereas I look at the neighborhood I'm in right now, which is gorgeous, but these are the 4,000 square foot houses, and everybody kind of has their own, kind of isolated in their own homes. Whereas in China, if you're bored, you call up your friends and off you go. There are restaurants everywhere. There are tea shops that open through midnight, 2 a.m. So it was really kind of very close, very cultural. You don't need to get together to get drunk. There are a lot of places like bubble tea. You can have tiny little dim sum desserts. Like there seems to be a little more variety to life that I kind of missed, and the closeness.
I love that. I love that. The community is the best thing. Like you hear the phrase, go to your neighbor for some sugar or borrow some sugar. And that doesn't happen anymore. We moved into our house about a month ago now, and a little over a month, and we haven't met any of our neighbors.
Yeah.
None of them.
It's sad.
It's really, they might wave or something on the passing each other down the road, but we literally don't know any of our neighbors.
And before this, we lived in a condo. So literally it was just a building full of houses,
Together.
people all around us. and we didn't know any of them. And it's just so sad. Like I watched the old shows where, the neighbors come over every single day, like Full House, Kimmy
Yeah.
Gibbler was always next door coming over to the Tanner house. And like that, you just don't have that anymore. You don't have community. You don't have togetherness. People are so separated. And that's something that is really, really sad. And I think that's awesome that they're still doing it. Is it still like that today in China?
I think also a little less so than it was before. Unfortunately, I think it's just part of our revolution of becoming a part of an evolution of who we become. Everybody's so busy, and reimagine success is like everybody still has these preconceptions of, oh, I need to go to the school, get paid how much, and just really build up. On top of that, it's true, the student debt is real here as well as it's back home. We did the calculation of living in Beijing. It's like very much like San Francisco in the US where,
Oh, wow.
right. You calculate, it's like, oh, I'm 25 now. I could work all my life and not be able to buy a home, not a condo,
Right.
So that is tremendous amount of stress that make you make poor decisions, make different decisions, and often not very good decisions when you're desperate.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of people live their entire lives in the fight or flight mode because you're always
And your
stressed
body's
out.
always stressed.
You're always worried. You're always sick. Like all the demands that life puts on people keeps us feeling in that state of tension constantly. And it's a really terrible way to live.
Yeah, for sure.
So now when you started in your career here in the United States, were you happy at your career? Did you feel still fulfilled, or did you still feel like there was something missing and you were trying to fill it, but it just wasn't quite there?
Oh, it was a lot missing for me. I knew that. I had known that for a long time. I think, I'd known that since my early 20s, and it became so crystal clear when my dad got sick when I was 24 and have to travel under a tremendous amount of stress. And I think there's a book called Our Body Keeps a Score, right? You just carry that trauma inside of you, that fear. And that's, I back then I remember knowing a few people to say like, oh, my mom got sick and I brought her to the hospital 10 days in a row because I needed to. I'm like, how do you do that? Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I get to do that. So, my eyes were kind of opened up to all these possibilities. And the biggest one, number one on the list, as we talk about time freedom, get to choose and, follow our passion, do what we love. My number one freedom is pretty easy, is I want to be there when my loved ones get sick. And I know it doesn't happen all the time, thank God. But when they are, or my friends, I want to be there for them. And I have been able to do that. One of my dear friends years ago, I think 2016 or 17, lost her husband. And literally she was so fearful to go to her mammogram at this place that's 1 hour away from where we lived. And I just drove. I drove by myself, waited there with her for hours. I don't know why it took so long. She turned out to be okay. But I realized just how much it meant to me and to us. Obviously, that's not all of it. So for me, that is a huge mindset shift into doing what I do today.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that just shows your heart as well. I'm very similar when it comes to that. I would love to be there for my friends and my family all the time. Unfortunately, when you do have a day job in 9 to 5, you have a lot going on. And then we do have our creative after work. It limits your life. It limits your social life. It limits, my sister just had a trauma thing happen in her life, and I wasn't able to be there for her to actually give her a physical hug. And that just broke my heart as much as it broke her heart, that we're not able to be there all the time for each other. So for you to be able to be there for your friends and family and to support them and they support you is just amazing.
Yeah, it's an incredible feeling. There were a lot of different things missing from a traditional career. And, we can certainly dive into that. But I think one pivot's coming out of a full-time corporate America career is that what people don't realize that sometimes you leave certain people behind. You still love and care for them, but because now you've entered into a different world and our time is limited, and maybe some of the things that you do, they may, admire. Sometimes they'll be like, what is podcasting? Why are you doing this? You're so weird, and then you kind of, you part ways, and there's certain grief to that, right? Not related to death,
right.
but yeah.
Well, it is a little bit. It is like a death in the family, sort of, because you are parting, and it's like a death of that friendship. And then, unfortunately, in this day and age, we do have to pick our friends and who is close to us and who is surrounds us and who is our mentors. And, you have to be careful on picking those people, or else, their energy will throw off on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Something Melissa and I have been talking a lot about is who is going on our journey with us. Because if you're not going on our journey with us, then you're not going to hold us back. And we're just going to have to leave you at the train station as we get on, because this train's leaving. And, like we realize that it's hard and some people's feelings might get hurt, but like we only have a limited amount of time that we have to even give to friends or family. Even, sometimes you have to back away from some family members because they're sucking you dry. And so we really take time to evaluate our friendships and the people that are in our lives. And we say, like, is this person worth, and I hate that it sounds like this, but is this person worth the time that we're taking away from other things that we could be doing to spend time with them? And if not, if they're not helping us grow or succeed in any kind of way, then really at this point in our lives, we just don't have time for frivolous relationships.
It's true. It's true. Whatever you say yes to means no to something else.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yep. Yeah. And so, speaking of leaving your marketing career, now, was there any fear or uncertainty when you left that position?
Yeah, I think I probably did, but I felt very little amount of it, knowing that I had mentors, I had people I could go to. I have a partner who really supports me, and we're both freelancers. And my mom, my dad, even technically, they were all kind of freelancers and creators. So I felt like, how bad could it be? And the one thing is, like, I could always go back to get a full-time job. At least that's what I thought back then. And if you were to ask me again, I can never go back. It's just not possible anymore. And, I'm really grateful, knowing, but for everybody else who's listening and thinking about this, like, yes, you can turn around, because frankly, freelancing or creative entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. It's right for me, it's right for you guys, but not for everyone. It's okay to change your mind. And it's not a sense of failure if you do choose to go back.
Right.
So for me, right, knowing that you got your parachute, you got your cushion, you're good. And speaking of cushion, financially, I waited long enough. I also needed a green card, not through marriage, but something I do on my own, like work. There's something, I got to do this on my own. And so I did it, and I waited until I was like 32 or so when I made the leap. So at that point, I was like, you know what? I can live comfortably for a year and a half to, frankly, maybe 2 years. I was very careful about saving 401k, not spending the money I didn't have. All those decisions leading to, what's the worst could happen? Don't hire me for 2 years. I'm going to be okay. And of course, I was busy within the weekend.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's so cool. So something I want to dive into a little bit in that I'm just super interested is, you mentioned you were a 3rd degree black belt. And for our listeners who aren't looking at you right now, you don't have a large frame. You're a pretty frail woman.
She's like, look at my muscles.
But like a 3rd degree, that, like, I have a feeling that you could probably kick my butt pretty easily, although I'm pretty frail at myself.
That's funny. I am 5'4" for people, because I kind of co-host a show or a co-produce a show called Unable Disabled. We do this thing at the beginning describing ourselves. So I'm 5'4". I'm 126 pounds, give or take. And Melissa, was going to ask you, you look very tall. You are.
I am 5'7". 5'7", like
you look like 5'10" to me.
No, well, I had heels on earlier. So.
Wonderful, very, very proportionate. You're like, so for me, I actually start looking back to that experience of having to spar with a lot of people much bigger than me. Frankly, a lot of people, like, when you're tall in martial arts, that is a huge advantage, because the range where you can operate in is just huge. People have to get really close to you. And if you're bigger, you can beat that person up pretty easily. And overcoming that fear and keep going was kind of something I finally reflected on, not just a hobby.
Did you get any kind of like really good I'm sure you did, but like what kind of discipline lessons like do you still hang on to today in your life that you gleaned from the martial arts?
Oh, for sure. I think it has so many parallels to entrepreneurship. And I can't believe that you brought this up. And I'm like, I'm going to create a mini course about this, like connecting martial arts
You
through
should.
entrepreneurship. How can I
Yes.
think about this for 10 years?
Yeah, it's
I
your
think
new it's your new book.
I actually really love it. I just kind of that light bulb moment because
Here
I think
on Reimagine Success.
exactly, it's all happening right now in real time. Is I started really taking it seriously after the week after my 18th birthday. I was by myself, summer, living in Boston here during the summer, and so I signed up. And when you think about it, you're 18 years old. That's already very different than when you were 8 or when you were 4. So
Now,
you're going to college.
What was
Yeah?
your decision to sign up? Was it more of a self-defense kind of thing or just something you were curious about?
I mean, being Chinese, the funny thing is like we would take these martial art lessons kind of, half-baked, half-assed, when we're growing up. Like you don't just be Chinese and everybody knows martial arts, just so everybody knows. It's a myth. And I was not really spoiled in the sense, but my parents never pushed me literally like to force me to do anything. So I would sign up for these clubs and I didn't really work with me. Like, you go there, it's just a club. You're there to play with other kids. That was my experience in growing up. And I felt like I really missed out to be able to hone in on these skills. So I looked up whatever popular martial arts schools. It wasn't a Kung Fu school. I'm Chinese, but instead it's Taekwondo. It's a Korean martial art. I said, what the heck? I like the color belts. I'm just going to go. And it was, right. It was so serious. It was from little kids to people my age, to people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50, all the way to like, there's somebody who's like 89, literally.
Wow.
Yeah. Grandma, you see the whole family, like grandma, grandkids. Once again, just like the podcast, I got exposed to so many people, not just my age. So people would literally tell me somebody who's 28 to say, you're 18. I tell you, those problems would just melt away. And people give me these advice where other 18-year-olds are freaking out about. So I learned very quickly. But the one lesson I would say that informs maybe my future book would be, when you're 18, that you think you're on top of the world and you are a little embarrassed to learn new things. I still remember I loved music and I tried to learn the saxophone in high school. I really wasn't good at it. In college, I was even worse at it compared to all the other kids and for students. But for martial arts, it's like you're 18, you think you're so old and mature and you're putting on this white belt and you're learning all the basics. But it's funny, nobody was really watching and they're very supportive. So that's one. And of course, when you're a white belt, I still remember that moment to say, I gotta be able to do that wheel kick, which to describe it, you turn around and your back leg just do this, kind of sweeping motion all the way across. So powerful. Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm going to do that while I'm jumping. But of course, that's like a criteria that you have to learn when you're a blue or a red belt, right? Like, I'm a white belt, I'm going to get there today. And of course you realize it's not today. And they start showing you from point A to B to C to D to E. There's so many steps to strengthen your body before you could get there. And all of a sudden it just clicked for me to say, oh, you don't just go from a full-time job to a multi-six-figure entrepreneur right there. You have to go through these paths. You're going to, some days going to worse than the days before. And that's okay. Because I feel like there's such a clear reference in my head. So I never really truly get so burned out and frustrated that I wanted to stop. I think because of that. So great question. Thank you, Jesse.
Man, I'm going to read this book when it comes out because I feel like it's got a lot of good nuggets.
You are going to get off this podcast and start writing. I already know it.
Typing uncontrollably tonight.
So let's go to your podcast because I love it. Feisworld Media. If you guys have not listened to her podcast, Feisworld, then definitely head over. We're going to have all the links in our story notes. But what is the goal of the podcast and what kind of topics do you generally cover?
Yeah. So for 8 years that I've been running my show, it has really transitioned or pivoted a few times. And at the beginning, I thought was going to be, I came from a digital marketing agency. I want to show other people the brilliant minds inside. That lasted for about I think 2 to 3 months because I kind of lost interest in talking about a career I knew I was going to leave behind. And that became my little pocket or a little kind of like a secret hidden gem of episodes and voices I want to hear once I'm actually, this life is behind me. So from there, I thought, okay, I'm going to make it be about unsung heroes and self-made artists. I don't want to hear these 25 men interviewing each other, talking about how rich and famous they are. Make it be about this. And I realized as I was going through transitions and my own becoming, there's so many conversations I had were about that, were about transitions. Transitions and changes were extremely difficult in people's lives for a variety of reasons, from getting sick, becoming a caregiver, becoming moms. I never knew the becoming moms part are going to be really popular because I wasn't a mom. I'm still not a mom. And women start writing to me about, oh my goodness, your guest talking about postpartum depression. Fei, I just want to tell you how that episode transformed my life. I don't feel alone anymore. To like fast forward 8 years later, there are, I'm very focused on creative entrepreneurship and very focused on people who have successfully made that transition, operating at many different scales, like happily making $120,000, happily making $300K, for people who are running multi-million-dollar enterprises, selling multiple products and creating passive income streams, because that is the only way, and to hit that kind of figure. So I learned a lot of that. And there are many, like a series episodes on 10, 15 episodes on Cirque du Soleil that became really popular, and we get all tickets and, kind of be part of their lives, which has been amazing. So it's a hodgepodge, but right now it's creative entrepreneurship.
So what were those transitions like, going from, one kind of topic and then going to another? How did you actually do that transition?
Yeah, it was, kind of happened organically.
Okay.
And I will admit the challenge, because at the time, people really didn't know who I was. I really wasn't an influencer for the longest time as a podcaster. At least I didn't see myself to be one, even though very quickly I interviewed a lot of tier ones like Jordan Harbinger, who's got one of the top 100 podcasts, Krista Tibbett, someone from On Being, I've admired her for decades, Seth Godin eventually, but I never really saw myself as this influencer with significant influence. So in other words, I can pivot pretty easily without pissing anybody off, right? So I'm just being me. If you like to follow on, great. Get on the train, get off the train very easily. There's no obligation. And there's that freedom, a celebration about being slightly unknown. But I think the growth for me to become the person that people do contact because of the work I share is mostly YouTube, but I'll let you make the transition.
So keeping on going with the podcast, you've actually developed an AI system called Pod Intelligence. Can you tell us about that and how it integrates with your podcasts and the world and beyond and everything that you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for teasing that out. So you can learn more at podintelligence.com. So podintelligence.com. And so my partner Adam and I finally put our feet down and say, we got to do this. We've been waiting for this to be available for 8-10 years. What it does, right? It's incredible. So for the longest time, we have been these creators, podcasters, and even webinar runners. We're just sitting on this, mountain of information, and we wish we could dive in and learn more, but you are burned out at the end of the day with a full-time job and, working into the evening. And frankly, there's certain things that AI, artificial intelligence, and natural language processing will do better than human beings and much, much faster. So we rely on natural language processing, so NLP, to basically it's software driven. This is not us verbally giving you any information. So we run it through our own software. 50 of your episodes, podcasts, from the entire year, or 50 different videos from your webinar. And we're then going to generate and tell you the keywords that mentioned throughout, like the through line of all the content that you produce, as well as individual episodes where you get word clouds, keywords mentioned, and contextually what's related to that keyword. So in other words, if people want to talk about single mom, what it's like to be a single mom, that person doesn't have to keep repeating single moms for the context to show up for that keyword. So there are synonyms being developed and compiled, and brands, people, places mentioned. And now in addition, I didn't think this was possible, but we're able to slice up hundreds of these audio clips and video clips up to 1 minute that you can easily use and repurpose on Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it. It's been fantastic. We're developing organically, and now we have multiple clients who already made purchases, and makes us very happy.
It's amazing. Fei actually showed me her demo. And if you are a podcaster or if you do summits, any kind of events, it is so brilliant. You literally type a keyword. You can say smile, for example, and the entire video will come up in a little short segment, and you can expand it a little bit. You can close it in a little bit. You can do it exactly a sentence, and you can add that to your social media. You can add that to a video clip, and it's just such a great product. So I'm so proud of you, Fei, like for
I'm
coming
so
up with
glad.
this and doing this, and we will help promote as much as possible, guys. I'm telling you, this product is going to be the next big thing for podcasters.
And I imagine that probably helps a lot with like figuring out what your hashtags are and that sort of thing, because you can find all those topics that are talked about a lot, and then you can start, posting with using the hashtags so you can reach those people that are interested in that.
Yeah, dead on, Jesse. Like, you gain kind of visibility into your hashtags. You can now pre-plan your content, because otherwise we're kind of shooting in the dark. Just like Feisworld podcast last week was circus, this week is about transitions. I don't know what's going to happen from now. And instead, you can go back into the compilation of your content. And today, this month, we're going to focus on Asian American culture. Next week or next month, we'll focus on competitive advantage. So you can actually understand what's been talked about. Like, also, you can identify content gaps where certain things that you really care about, but you haven't had enough guests acknowledging or addressing those topics. And I think it just has so much potential. We're making changes and trying to make it better every day.
I love it. I mean, I love the fact that you created this to solve a problem. And that is innovators. Innovators, they think outside the box, they see a problem, and they create something in order to solve it. It's just brilliant. I love it. And speaking of that, you actually created your own documentary series on Amazon. What was that like? And what was it like to see your documentary on Amazon?
Oh, it was incredible. That was a decision. That was a leap I made, because originally we were working with a distributor. So for people who are making films, as you know, you work with them and you can no longer submit your work directly to Netflix, this and that. And it was a very low budget documentary series. I invested some and I found a sponsor, and it's very magical. And I will preface by saying that I created the film we're not here to win awards. It was the Feisworld docuseries where I interviewed the incredible people, including Sarah Cooper, who got really popular and famous in the past 2 years. She's a comedian now. Seth Godin. We interviewed the Atherton twins from Cirque du Soleil, and Chris Voss, who never split the difference and has his own masterclass. So a variety of people, and to see their faces with me on stage being interviewed, it's fantastic. And I would say the sort of the external effect of it becomes social proof for people. A lot of people may just watch, frankly, a few minutes of it, and they go, wow, you did this. How do I get to do that? And what was the experience like? And kind of enriches the conversation that I have on different podcasts as well.
Yeah. And another thing that what you're doing, finding these people and bringing them into these platforms is so amazing, and it's been really successful for you so far. And a thing that a lot of people really wonder about, because you do have a good YouTube channel that gets lots and lots of views all the time, and that you're bringing on these amazing guests all the time. But people are often wondering, what's that YouTube monetization really look like for somebody who's doing this? And you gave us permission to talk about this. I'm just going to put that disclaimer. We all realize that talking about finances is generally considered rude, but because it is something that so many people wonder about, like, what does YouTube monetization actually look like in the real world with a real YouTuber that's doing this every day?
For sure. I will talk about it, at a high level. I'll throw out some numbers so people can have some context to it and ask questions. So first of all, my channel, Feisworld Media, is very much focused on creative entrepreneurship, but specifically technologies that do not scare people away. Literally, I have people, especially women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. Some of them are watching my videos to know how to operate Zoom, how to facilitate and moderate. It blew my mind to realize that people are really eager to learn, and I can provide that safe space for them to ask questions and to be able to follow along. Because during the pandemic, it wasn't really an option for you not to bring yourself online, or for you to simply invite somebody from the Genius store to like Genius Bar to come help you out. And so I think empowered a lot of people, and empowered me as a tutorial teacher to go find tools that can really help people for all the right reasons. So with that said, the technology segment on YouTube has a relatively high CPM, and that is how much you basically get paid for 1,000 views. And there's also something called the RPM, which is YouTube is smart enough to say, you know what, we're splitting the revenue. As YouTube, we're keeping 45%, and we're giving the creators 55%. So the RPM is what we keep, how much we really make per 1,000 views. So, so generally CPM for what I'm doing is anywhere between $20 to $40, whereas makeup artists, bloggers could be looking at $5, $7, or like around $10. It's a huge difference when you're counting on 50,000 to 100,000 views, mostly for my traffic. And so during the pandemic, I remember the highest I've made from YouTube ads alone was around $20 to $100. Now, that might not sound like, frankly, a lot of money to people. You could pay rent, you could pay for your heating bills or whatever, right? Like, it's interesting. Whenever I share, it's more like, wow, Ali Abdal is making $4 million. This is like so insignificant, but right. But people, I love one of my colleagues, Michael, said, well, Fei, if you see $700 cash on the ground, do you think it's worth picking up or to look at? I was like, you know what? I need to stop apologizing for my YouTube revenue now. And so right now, on average, I make about 500. So there's kind of a dip for a lot of us, which leads to the second point is I started basically building a lot of sponsorships with brands. Other people say, oh, Fei, you seem to like interview people. We're from Restream. We're a live streaming company. Do you want to partner with us? Or you're a creative entrepreneur. Did you know that you can be smarter with your money by using, personal finance apps such as Found? A lot of transcription companies. And so they find you and they like your style and they want you to not represent their brand, but to create content for them. So that revenue is significantly higher than what YouTube as just a single brand can pay you. A lot of people get so fixated on YouTube revenue alone. How do I increase that? I say, no, go over here. It's much better if you can have 5, 10 brands pay for you, because $5 to $1,000 each is not a lot of money for them, as opposed to you asking one person for $10,000. So I will pause there.
Well, it's actually so incredible because you're using YouTube as a platform, and you're using it as a platform in order to basically market it yourself. So it's a really brilliant marketing strategy.
Thank you. I love it. You have to really love it. You can't be in it for the money. So you can create a content that's truly authentic to you. And then after that, the money comes. A couple of additional revenue streams that I will mention are affiliate programs. So the software you talk about that you truly love and want to share with people, you can apply to be an affiliate. Typically for software, you make anywhere between 20 to 30% per transaction. So that's where you get into the making money in your sleep, even more powerful than creating just sponsored videos, because that's still very active work. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's so great to get like the real scoop on it, and
I love your honesty. Love it. Thank you so much for being honest.
Oh, my pleasure.
So it's now time for our favorite part of the podcast, and something that we do daily. We did it today, and we're going to continue to do it every single day. We want to celebrate success. And so
we want to celebrate you.
What is something recent in your life that's big or small that you want to celebrate your success on this episode?
Oh, I really want to celebrate my moments with both of you. And I know I met Melissa months ago, but recently I feel like the three of us have met. And also on Monday, not too long ago, I know depending on where this episode is released, the ability to really be working for executive summits again, to be able to connect with so many people. We had a crazy morning that day with some technical issues, but it was all sorted out thanks to Melissa and the team, and get to speak directly with Mark Cuban, Joanne Littman and Lisa Williams. Learned so much. for me, just a few hours, but I'm so grateful that happened.
That's amazing.
That's so cool. And we celebrate that with you because I mean, as a podcaster and somebody like, we get excited when we get big guests, like
we're excited that we have Fei.
Yeah. Like there's a
huge.
giddiness that you get when you book somebody and you're like, oh my goodness, I actually get to interview this person. And like, I couldn't imagine being in your seat, getting to interview a billionaire, Mark
Right.
Cuban. Like just
right.
that man is just so brilliant and has worked so hard and done such amazing things in his life. And you got to sit and talk with him one-on-one and like pick his brain and learn from him. And that's such a cool experience. And we got to share in that with you. And it's just, we're proud of everything that you're doing. And we want to recognize that and celebrate you for all of your hard work that brought you to this place.
Thank you so much.
And also, where can our listeners find you? Where can they find your podcast? Where can they find your system? Just everything about yourself.
Yeah. So for me, anything Feisworld related, including the documentary, the YouTube channel, you can search for Feisworld. That is F as in Frank, EI, S as in Sam, WORLD, pretty much everywhere, YouTube, and it's my website, feisworld.com. And if you want to learn more about podcast intelligence, it is at podintelligence.com. And I welcome questions and love to grow with this community.
That's awesome. And speaking of growing, what is your final piece of advice that you would like to leave for all the aspiring entrepreneurs out there that just want to give up on their 9-to-5 and do what it is that they're passionate about?
Yeah. Start creating small, start something on your own. Don't wait. If you have this tremendous partnership like Melissa and Jesse, fantastic. Not everybody has a partner or a network. So if that's the case, start something on your own, start small. I also wrote down, which is please reduce production complexity. Mm-hmm. That means that your podcast episodes, your work, your YouTube video, your blog, it doesn't have to be perfect. It will never be perfect. So get out of your way, know when it's good enough to ship, and give yourself the permission to not be the greatest entrepreneur, the greatest creator you'll ever meet, and just grow and be patient with yourself.
Such great advice. And
I love that.
It really that spoke to me because, as creators, we often will be like, it's not quite ready. It's not quite ready, not quite. And you'll just not quite ready yourself to death and you'll never release anything. And sometimes you just have to say, you know what, this is good enough. And you just got to stop and put it out into the world and see what happens with it.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, just like right now, we are still using our webcam from the computer, and Fei has this amazing webcam that we're going to get soon. But just looking at us side to side, I'm like, okay, we have a little bit more work to do, but we are out there. We're making it happen, and we're practicing every single time that we're on a podcast, and we are doing it. We've never missed a Thursday. We've always got our podcast out, and I think it's just so important to be consistent and to keep practicing and to keep pushing yourself forward and keep growing and learning. And we've learned so much from you, Fei, and you are going to be one of our huge mentors. We had so many other questions, but we have to bring you back on the podcast and talk about all of your future successes, because I know I can't wait for this book to come out.
I'm so excited to write it. I really am.
It's going to be so cool.
So we're so excited to have you on. And I mean, this hour has just flown by. I could sit here and talk to you forever.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. And please let me know how I can really share and celebrate your work as well. I'll do everything in my power and more to come along that journey with you.
No,
thank you so much, Fei. And we appreciate all your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Until next time.
Fei is unbelievably inspirational to me. And now I feel convicted.
Man, I mean, that is where we want our podcast to be.
Yeah. So, her saying about how don't wait to put stuff out. And then we're sitting here looking at our video quality, and we really want to go video. And you know what? We might just do it sooner than we anticipated before we get a good camera, because why wait? It's just a little video quality.
I mean, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the fact that you can share your mind, you can share your stories, you can be innovative and maybe not have the best equipment possible,
Yeah.
but you are trying and you are starting.
Yeah. And that's all you got to do is you have to keep trying and you have to keep pushing forward. And if you want to accomplish something, it's little steps, just one small step at a time. I love the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time, and that's
Do not eat an elephant.
Yeah, don't eat an elephant. They're sweet. And my daughter would be very upset as that's her favorite animal. But if you were to eat an elephant, you would have to do it just one bite at a time because you can't fit that whole thing in your mouth. So keep that in mind as you're pursuing your dreams. Keep that in mind with everything that you do. Do it in stages, but just do it. Don't wait and don't stop. And this was just such an amazing interview. And we're so blessed to have had Fei on this podcast.
And thank you so much for all of our listeners all around the world. We just want to take a moment and celebrate you. We are on Patreon at patreon.com/creativeglobal. Reach out to us on social media and share your successes. We love to hear your success stories. So please share that at any time. And with that, this is a Creative Global Entertainment production. Did you get motivated? Do you feel inspired?
Don't worry about keeping up with the Joneses anymore, and don't forget to celebrate your successes every single day. Thank you for taking this journey with us.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Reimagine Success Pod. Email us at reimaginesuccesspod@gmail.com and let us know what your successes are. Head over to patreon.com/creativeglobal for bonus and behind-the-scenes content.
New episodes every Thursday at reimaginesuccesspod.com or your favorite podcast streaming platform.
So let's change our mindsets and reimagine success.